Congrats on getting beyond $1 million. What got you here won't always get you there. This is a podcast for entrepreneurs who want to reach beyond their 7-figure business and scale to 8, 9, and even 10 figures. I'm Brad Weimert, and as the founder of EasyPay Direct, I have had the privilege to work with more than 30,000 businesses, allowing me to see the data behind what some of the most successful companies on the planet are doing differently. Join me each week as I dig in with experts in sales, marketing, operations, technology, and wealth building. And you'll learn some of the specific tools, tactics, and strategies that are working today in those multi-million, 8, 9, and 10-figure businesses. Life can get exciting beyond $1 million. Justin Donald, I really appreciate you hanging out on a Saturday, man.
This is fun. I'm glad. Hey, if there's anyone I want to hang out with on a Saturday, it's you. We always get into fun adventures, great conversation, some good wine or champagne like we have today. So, yeah.
Yes, I love it, man. Well, I have known you for basically my entire adult life. In fact, the first time I met you, I was crammed in a minivan when I was 19, going from Chicago down to Lake of the Ozarks on a sales award trip with Vector Marketing.
That's right. Yeah, what a fun time.
Wild. And from that, you ended up being, I'm going to give a quick rundown on things and then we'll fill in the gaps, but you ended up being one of, if not the most successful division manager for Vector Marketing. From that, you bought a number of mobile home parks. You then started this company, IFM?
Yes.
IFM, which served as a resource for REITs to provide all of the maintenance and management services for real estate investment trusts, which, like, quick interlude. So a real estate investment trust buys 1,000 homes. How the fuck are they supposed to manage those 1,000 homes? And there wasn't a really good way. So IFM was created and you guys went from 0 to 10 million in like 16 months.
Yeah, it went really fast. And really, you know, the interesting thing about that business is it ended up being more on the private side. So it was institutional owners of single family homes and we would service them. So it's the same thing, just, you know, the Blackstones of the world and the American Homes for Rent, you know, your larger ownership groups.
Got it.
You know, tens of thousands.
Oh,
you know, Invitation Homes is 82,000 single family homes at that time.
Oh, Jesus. Okay, so it's not 1,000. It's you have 82,000 homes.
Yeah.
How do you manage them?
Our sweet spot, I mean, for a long time was anyone that had over 10,000 homes. And there's not a whole lot of groups that have that volume. But we have since kind of come down to, you know, a smaller number. 1,000 homes, I think, is a great number.
So I want to dig into that and also sort of the previous division manager status, because you were managing thousands of people through Vector Marketing and also managing, you know, probably hundreds of managers through that process also. And then I will jump back into that in a second. But today, you have built this big brand as the lifestyle investor. So you wrote a Wall Street Journal bestseller called The Lifestyle Investor, and you've got a group, and you basically get together and mastermind on how to invest in a variety of different vehicles, but specifically through the lens of cash flow and how does it serve your life. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I think that's the foundation. You know, everything grew from it being a cash flowing style of investment. And we now, you know, when people kind of accomplish their goals where they have achieved true, you know, financial freedom, and, you know, that's, for us, we'll call them a lifestyle investor. They have covered their lifestyle with passive income. Then we get to the point where we'll layer on different types of investments that maybe don't cash flow. But we do feel very strongly, or I feel very strongly, on the foundation being cash flow, because it's just more of a sure thing. You're not waiting. You're not banking on appreciation. And then once you have cash flow, it makes it easy to invest in a little higher risk assets or different types of assets. You're getting into the VC space. I still don't like the seed space as much because it's so high risk. But if it's an investment made with cash flow, then, you know, it's a lot safer than if you're taking what could be principal and putting into something that's likely not going to work out.
Mm. Yeah, well, I want to talk about that, but before we get there, let's back out to being a division manager, and I want to talk about that before IFM, because presumably those skill sets were pulled directly over to IFM. But you were Can you give framework just for what vector marketing is and kind of what the business model is for people that don't know?
Yeah, so vector marketing is the marketing or the direct sales arm for Cutco Cutlery, and for a long time was, and still is like one of the top places for college students to work, to be able to gain soft skills, and for those that are really hardworking individuals like you, like me, where you could put in extra effort and make a lot more than, what you would make if you were just on an hourly wage or something. You had commission. And so I paid, I sold like you did, and I paid for all my college. I went to the University of Illinois. I paid for everything by selling Cutco. Mm-hmm. But in between my junior and senior year, I ran an office in my hometown, a suburb of Chicago. And I had this epiphany of how much fun it was to train people and motivate people and really create great sales leaders, as opposed to being that myself. And I found that I was a lot stronger at helping and coaching people do it than for me to just get out there and do it. Mm-hmm. And so I enjoyed this idea of having, 5, 10, 15, 20 great salespeople underneath me. And I was like, oh, I don't have to work as hard, and I actually enjoy this work more. And so I kind of scaled that, and I graduated, and I was like, oh, I was going to go, to Wall Street. I had a few things potentially lined up, and I said, you know what, this vector thing was really fun. I think maybe I'll just do this full time. So I ended up opening an office and did very well that first year, and ended up earning a promotion in 3 years to take over a much larger geography in the U.S. And it was cool that I could do that as a young guy. Yeah. Just out of college, and get into 7 figures pretty early into my career.
Well, and also for a couple of things. One, it's hilarious to me that you just said you like managing people and uplifting people. It's like the bane of my existence. Like I'm working on, I'm leaning in that direction, and I'm getting better there for sure. And I'm just finding that some love for that right now. But the polar opposite of that was me in that company, and I learned that I could sell, and I could just do more, and I would make more. And I remember vividly Chris Heigl, who was in the role of division manager, also my division manager, poking at me and critiquing me, and he said, "Yeah, but you haven't a cap on what you're going to make." And I took it as sort of a slight at the time. I had a very hard time learning from mentors and not just falling on my face and learning the lessons myself from mistakes. I should have listened to him when I was 22. But that's hilarious. So I'm working on that, and that's a really good thing to learn early. Also, there's correct me if I'm wrong, but there is sort of a bifurcation of status between a district manager and a division in that company, where as a district, you're still an independent contractor and you are operating independently. As a division, are you on salary with the company?
No, you're still at that point an independent contractor. The next move up to region manager would have been a salaried position, which I never had any interest in.
Got it.
I liked having the autonomy. I liked not having a cap on what I could make. I liked having the tax advantages of being an independent contractor. There was just a lot to me that that type of classification served me and was more advantageous, in my opinion.
Yeah. And so for, the audience largely as entrepreneurs that are, multi-7 or 8, 9 plus figure companies, when you say at a very young age you were making 7 figures, you mean you were actually taking home 7 figures.
Correct.
Right. So the revenue and yes, it was inside of a company, but the revenue for the division was, what were the sales numbers for the division?
So I was generally between like $5 and $10 million in sales.
Got it.
And so, and really at that point, I mean,
and this is at what age?
So when I was running my own office, and it was just mine, but then I deployed a bunch of others. So I was kind of like a division manager who wasn't really yet a division manager. So, I mean, my first full year out of college, I made 7 figures.
Crazy.
Which is nuts because, my parents, I mean, still to this day, are making, I don't know that they've ever really combined. I don't think they're even making more than 75,000 a year.
Wow.
Right. Maybe in their best year ever, it was over 100,000. So I remember thinking that first year, whoa, I just made more than my parents combined, and how much I just
by a lot.
Like, yeah. I just felt like that was a real blessing. Like my summer that I ran an office, that summer alone, I made $30,000. So in 3 months, I was making $10,000 a month
as a kid.
Yeah. And so that was more than both of my parents made for that summer. So I was in college as I did that. And I thought, wow, there's a real opportunity here, and I'd like to explore it a little further. And so as I started doing the things that a division manager did before being a division manager, that's kind of why I got the nod pretty early. I was one of the earliest promotions. I think I was 24 years old when I got promoted. And at that point in time, the division was doing early on, I would say 4 mil, and then I was taking home anywhere from about 250 to 750.
That's awesome. And so, again, kind of setting frame here, the only thing that you weren't doing was product creation, really. And there's some customer service elements that corporate did, but product creation was really the main thing, right? So
and fulfillment.
Oh, right. Sure. Yep. And fulfillment, right? So you're running functionally a sales organization.
Yeah, without a doubt.
Yeah. And that's awesome. So you lived in the division manager space for a while. What do you think the core skills were that translated there? Like, what did you learn there that you then applied when you started IFM?
Well, I think figuring out how to work with people. Well, first of all, figuring out how to hire good people. That was probably the first thing. The second thing is making sure that I could retain those people, because it's always a bummer when you don't manage someone well and you lose a good person. I feel like I learned how to not hire well as well. And I learned how to hire people that really aligned with. So I kind of figured out through these personality profiles who would be strong to complement my skill set in maybe my own local operation, but then who had a similar skill set of mine to run other locations that we would open up. And so I think the hiring, the training, the motivating, just retention and relationship techniques, I think those served me very well, because that's exactly what I've used in all these different organizations since, building IFM Restoration with a couple of friends, to, a lot of the consulting I did with companies as well, helping them build out sales and recruiting and comp and, leadership development, all that.
From a hiring perspective, you brought up personality profiling. What do you use? There are probably 15 different well-known, well-used personality profiles. And my general take on them is that any of them, as long as you have a framework and you really lean in, can be useful. But people have preferences. And if you pretend to use one, it's a total waste of time. Like if you just do the personality profile and you kind of half know it, and you really need to know the language, right? Because the common language is what allows you to, I think, communicate across your company and get the most out of it. But
yeah, I think it's very clear that if you have some sort of a system with how you assess someone versus not having it, it's a clear winner to have it, any of them. It is by far and away easier to hire and train and have people in the right seats. And this goes for any of them. This goes for the weakest one out there. That's still better than not having one. I think that there are a lot that have a big name, and there are a lot that have like good branding and marketing. I mean, I've probably I've for sure filled out myself almost all of them, because I wanted to understand them. And at one point in time, for some of the companies that I worked with or consulted with, I went through the whole gamut of all of them. And I want to figure out like what is the best, what is the strongest. And I don't know that there's necessarily like a standout best. Like I think you can make arguments that certain things are better for others for certain situations. I found that I liked predictive index the best. and culture index pretty close to second. I think those two are, to me, the bigger standouts. And I think the way that you get to who it is and build out even the graphs that say, hey, this type of personality, and some of these go a little further. So it's not just personality. You can do the personality profile, then you can do the behavioral profile. But you can learn really quickly, like, where someone is regularly, where are they under stress, where are they, in the skills for this job, and are they, are these skills that play to their strengths or not? And so that was wonderful when we could start. When we were scaling, it was like, all right, fill out this profile first.
When you were scaling,
yeah. And other companies that I've worked with, it was
who were you? What was so sorry to interject, but I'm curious because the profile of who you're hiring has a lot to do with sort of the path of hiring and certainly the questions you ask and what you look for. Who are you hiring at IFM?
Oh, so we had to hire technical, detail-oriented people that were kind of running logistics and dishing out service calls. We had to hire actual construction or people with construction knowledge that were actually doing the work or observing the work that was done. We were hiring contractors that had to have a certain skill set. We were hiring exec level at a certain point once we scaled enough. We were hiring, there was data entry. For a while we did that in-house, then we outsourced it. And we've done so many different things. So the reality is there are probably a good 10 different profiles that we were searching for to figure out who's the right fit.
We both know these people that buck structure. And one of the things that I love about you is that you are one of the people in my life that I see as more deliberate than myself. And I really love structure because inside of structure, I find freedom. When I know that there's a pattern and I know exactly what the pattern is and I can follow steps to get there and get a predictable result, then stress disappears because I'm not curious about if I'm doing the right thing or not. I can just follow the path, which is kind of what you're saying with the personality profile. Hey, I found the personality that I'm looking for. And maybe it's not perfect, but it's a huge step up. What are these steps that you think about when you're creating these profiles and when you're defining roles? Like you said you had probably 10 different roles that you were filling at IFM. Where did you start with that? Do you start with a job description? Do you start with a success profile? What does that look like for you?
I feel like we tried it all out, and there are probably many different ways that it works. But for us, we would figure out what's the position that we needed. We had people on our current team take it because what was nice is when you have a good fit, you're like, oh, this person's great at this role. Let's just find more people and copy this pattern, this graph that comes out. But there's other interesting things where, like with predictive index, you can figure out who the drivers are. So like, who are the people that are just moving forward? They're just going to get stuff done. There might be some casualties along the way because they may not be the most relationally oriented, but they're going to move and get stuff done. Those people are great in a lot of different positions, but they can't be managing people. Right. Like, or they need that skill set. If they're a strong driver, they need to have some of those relational skills. Otherwise, it's a train wreck. So, it was interesting. It's like there are certain roles where it's like, well, we don't really know what this person's supposed to do. We just know that we need to get results. We don't have a playbook yet. This isn't a franchise. So we're like trying to figure it out. So I think someone that's going to drive pretty hard is going to figure it out. And so there are roles where that is very applicable. There are other roles where you need someone that is super high detail, like for data entry. If you hire the wrong person for data entry, for anything that's like managing logistics or anything like that, it's just going to be a fast, quit, you're going to have to rehire. It's going to be a pain in the butt. And we just did that enough. Like, it's brutal to spend all the time with someone and hiring and training, and then they just quit, or you have to let them go.
Yes.
So I just think if you can figure this out on the front end, and for me, what I did is I was like, all right, before we even interview you, here's the profile, here's the assessment. Take this so we can see if you fit the job description. And if you don't fit that job description, maybe you fit a different one that we weren't hiring for in that ad, but something about it attracted you.
Oh, I like that.
But it started first with figuring out like, hey, who's good in their role today? Let's copycat those and we'll bring people on. And then we found that there were certain profiles that were good in a bunch of different positions. And so we were like, oh, we thought this person was great at, XYZ role, but they're actually even better in this other role. We should have been hiring all these people here. But having that data still gives you a leg up from what you were doing before. So it gives you that opportunity to get to door C when before you were just at doors A and door B.
I love that. So this is a really good accelerator specifically for people that are already established, where you have a team in place. And, if you look at, we run things off of EOS loosely, more based on my,
loosely, you need the freedom.
Yes, right. more based on my current lack of project management in-house. But we look at sort of core value fit and get it, want it, capacity to do it. And when people fit that all the way across the board, you're saying profile them. Say, hey, what is that personality profile for your role? You're crushing it. And then define that as, for this role, we're looking for this personality.
That's right.
And what I love that you said also is that if you do that for each of your roles, when somebody comes in and they match a profile that they didn't apply for, you're like, oh shit, that's the perfect profile, just not for this.
That's right.
Hey, check this out over here.
Yep.
Yeah, that's really good.
And sometimes, by the way, it's hiring them because they can fit a bunch of different roles, but let's just get them in on this role. Let's just teach them the business, and then we can move them later. So the one thing that we also learned is when you find someone that has one of the what we could categorize like, it's not like good or bad personality. It's like great fit, medium fit, poor fit, right? So you find a great fit. Well, we don't have this right now, but we're going to bring you on. We're going to figure it out. We're going to get you, like Jim Collins says, get the right people on the bus. You can figure out the seats later.
Yeah.
And so we started doing that, and we just would hire talent, and the talent figured out whatever position that they needed to figure out, unless it was just a total lopsided fit, which we learned not to do anymore. We did enough of that.
When you say the talent figured it out, what do you mean?
You hire the right person that's a go-getter, that's an achiever, that has drive, that has, all these different things. Like take a high achiever and put them in sales. They're going to do great in sales, but if you put them on a project, they'll probably do great on that project, depending if it, plays to their ancillary strengths too. So, you have like anytime there's high achievement and you've got a new company, a startup, or a company that's scaling, like you want them in the fold.
Yeah, that makes sense. In fact, I think that's probably, depending on the model or what industry you're in, that's probably the case it's the case with us. So we're, 20 something employees, and certainly we still are horribly understaffed. We still need leadership, managers, et cetera, in a variety of places. And it's finding the right people that is the challenge at the moment. But we're definitely at the size, we're not even sort of a startup. We're definitely at the size where somebody on the team that's expressing those values, it makes sense to put them in a new role or just a little project and say, hey, why don't you try this?
That's right. Keep the achievers having opportunities to achieve new and better and different, keep them properly incentivized. And then I also think that, there are a lot of people that have this belief of like, hey, build from within, promote from within. But if you have a certain role or you want to scale, you need management. There comes a time where it probably makes sense to hire people that have that track record. They've done it somewhere else.
Yeah.
They are proficient and they can come in and do it for you.
Yeah. Yeah. I have this, two things. One, it's really helpful to hear that because sometimes you get stuck in your own pattern. You're running your own race and you're doing things the way that you've done them and you have a certain narrative, and it just takes hearing something to think, oh man, that makes a lot more fucking sense. What have I been doing? Let me take the really good people and just ask them if they want to do something else.
Yeah. Having committees. I think it's really important to have different committees and have like the ideas box that people can just randomly, anonymously, throw their ideas in it. That I think is a powerful plus.
What do you mean by committees?
It's like, hey, we're looking to form some committees here to make this opportunity better. to help our team, function even better, to help us scale. You might have some ideas of what these committees are, but it could be an initiative. Like, we're trying to gain more customers. We're trying to service our current customers better. We're trying to, strengthen our sales team. Whatever it is, like, you can have people that actually care lean into that committee above and beyond the job that they're doing. Like, some people just are excited to help and build, especially if they're the right fit.
And be a part of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Two was in terms of hiring people, hiring management or leadership from outside. I think the best scenario ever is to find somebody that has literally done exactly what you want to do. And if you're not in a position where you're trying to truly disrupt a marketplace and innovate at a really high level, you can just find that because you have companies that are doing basically the exact same thing as you. Yes, you have some differentiator, yada, yada, blah, blah, blah. But you can find a sales manager that has led the same product, the same cycle, knows the path, if you have the budget.
Yeah. And these people all over are being underutilized, and therefore they want to leave. And they're looking for an opportunity that's new, that's interesting, but also that uses more of their talents. Like, if you've been doing the same thing for a while and you're the best in class wherever you are, and you want an opportunity to make more, but you don't see that opportunity, you may be looking, even though you make a really good income, even though you're the best person there. So yeah, I think that's really smart. And I also like having the influence of a different way of doing things. I think when you start a company, you're kind of like working with the best of what you have. And it's like, this is how we've always done it before, and this has worked. But what if there's a faster way? Or what if there's a better way? And the reality is, every plateau you hit, every time you grow, you scale, you hit some bottleneck, you plateau out, or you start to decline, you've got to like revamp the system to really be able to scale. And so I think it's great bringing people in that have a different perspective than you, that can offer feedback that worked somewhere else that you never even considered.
How do you find those people?
I mean, I think your number one marketplace these days is probably LinkedIn, and then recruiters. I think using some of these executive recruiting companies, I've got a lot of friends that have had a tremendous amount of success finding, like, the headhunter, the groups that really focus on niche roles or a specific role.
Or I could just have them on my podcast and then ask Justin Donald if he'll run my company.
I think the days of operations are long gone, but it was very fun during that season of life.
I can't afford January home. But yeah, real talk though, in addition to those things, one of the things that I have found to be really, really valuable is, this about me, and I think you operate very much the same way, but I'm a relationships first person. And being present in the environments where those people are is probably the strongest tool, but also feels the least efficient because it's time intensive and it's long tail, right? So me being present at industry events, or theoretically at sales events, sales conferences, if I wanted a sales leader, right, would be the space where I can build the relationships ahead of time, where I'm not cold calling them, right? I'm not headhunting them. I just have the relationships. And so when that opportunity comes up, I can reach out or they'll reach out.
Yeah. Or sponsoring events where your target market is, getting some shout outs for that, having a table set up where people can come over and learn more. I mean, if you know where your people are, if you need salespeople and you sponsor a sales conference and you set up a booth, you got a captive audience. You're going to find some good salespeople.
Oh, that's big. I've never thought about that. We do quite a bit of event sponsorship. We've done a lot of events in the past, but I have not thought about it through the lens of recruiting. And that's brilliant. I love that. IFM, you left, went on to do other things. You can tell that story or not. This next chapter of life I thought was is like, it's fascinating to watch. And it's it is by far the biggest one so far. And part of that is that through being the division manager at Cutco and then IFM, you've created these investment tools that have fueled your entire life. And this was namely mobile home parks, which I just can't fucking do it, man. I just don't want to be, you talk about the operation, ultimately that you have to have managers at these parks, and it's just a specific category of people that I don't want to be around all the time. That's really the simplest way to say it. Sound like an arrogant asshole saying it, but not really, kind of. I don't know. Judge me if you will. So you have a bunch of mobile home parks, and then you go on a trip that I put on actually to Fiji. And through that, you met a good friend of mine, Mike Koenigs. And Mike is a fascinating human.
Totally. I love that guy. He is as creative of a person as I've ever met, and just runs in a totally different like mind space.
Totally. Yep. Different frequency. It's all over the place. Huge heart. Super strange. We'll talk about everything or anything. We'll break down every barrier. And he helped launch your brand.
That's right.
So you wrote a book called The Lifestyle Investor, and it exploded. And part of both the book and the back end of it was this mastermind group, which you had never done before. And I remember you doing the first webinar for it through Mike's guidance. And tell me about that group and where that went.
Well, I'm not sure which webinar you're referencing specifically. I just remember I was so out of my comfort zone.
Yes.
I've never done anything with, an online brand or in an online community. I mean, this is foreign to me. I remember going to Traffic and Conversion Summit thinking there are a lot of people. This is the biggest online, marketing, e-commerce type of event. And I should probably learn this stuff. And this is before the Lifestyle Investor brand existed. And I remember going there, and there were 6,000 people the first year I went. And I remember thinking I was probably number 5,999 or possibly even number 6,000 for like just, I was ignorant. Like I was the least sophisticated person at this event. I am certain of that. I leaned over to this guy early on. I mean, we're like 3 or 4 talks in, and they keep talking about copy this, copy that. And I'm like, so I leaned over. I'm like, hey, what's copy? Everyone keeps talking about copy.
Oh my God.
What is that? And he kind of like chuckled, and it was nice. He told me, but the whole idea, I'm like, oh, this is making so much more sense now. That's how little I knew in the space. And so I just remember feeling like, what a fun opportunity to be the most novice person in the room, to learn a skill set that I think is applicable in today's world. I didn't know how I was going to apply it, but I wanted to be a student, and I wanted to learn. And so, I know what webinar you're talking about. So the very first thing I ever did, I kind of like shared with people how I created the passive income that I created. And really it was via the mobile home park. So it's interesting that you talk about like, I don't want to own them. You should just invest as an LP and have an institutional owner and operator that manages everything, right? Because it's an incredible space to get into, but you could get into syndicates and funds and never have to have a communication with anyone there. And for me, we've got a huge portfolio. I think we're, top 100. We might even be top 75 owners of mobile home parks now, which is funny because that was never the goal. I never thought that was going to be the case. But it is not a challenging business. It's a pretty easy business. It's not very hands-on. And even if you don't do it well, but you buy well, it's incredibly profitable. And so that passive income has really afforded my family, my wife, the ability to stop teaching, for me, the ability to stop working. I mean, it has been, a total godsend for us. And so I love teaching people this avenue. Like, this is one way you can do it. You can copy me just like I copied a bunch of other people. But at a certain point, we had so much cash flow, so much extra, monthly income coming in. We had to figure out what to do. Like, what do I do? Where does this money go?
Right.
And so that's really where the Lifestyle Investor brand began, is that I had to figure out how to invest this money wisely.
Right.
And I had a lot of friends that were very successful in different niche industries. And I decided I'd just like to get good at everything I could possibly get good at. And if I did mess up, I still have the cash flow coming in. So I'm just messing up on a monthly distribution.
Mm-hmm.
And so I feel like at one point in my life, I gripped money so tight. Like I held on because I had to control it. It was scarce to me. I didn't want to let it go. I didn't want to make a bad decision. What if I lose this money that I worked so hard for? And the moment I started letting go and just being like, money comes and goes and I can create more of it. And maybe I lose it, maybe I don't. I'll probably learn something along the way. Like that release gave me the ability to make better decisions and to not put money on a pedestal to control me.
Yeah. I mean, I can relate to that on so many levels. And I want to talk about two different directions with this. One is the business that is Lifestyle Investor, and two are the investments. But this idea of scarcity and holding on, some people never let go of that. And you see sort of this notion of the miser, this character that has been running their business for their entire life, and they're pick an age, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, and they don't spend any money on anything despite this tremendous wealth that they have, right? Mm-hmm. Despite whatever. And then what you just said, that pivotal moment introduced a freedom in your life that you probably sort of fantasized about or conceptualized, but didn't get that what you needed to do was actually chill the fuck out, right?
Yeah.
Just let go. And also I want to make sure that people don't conflate that with sloppiness or laziness or lack of intentionality behind it, because you're also very deliberate and very structured in your assessment of deals. But at some point you make the risk assessment and you say, hey, this is a little risky and I'm going to do it anyway, right? Because the risk reward is adequate. So let's give it a shot.
That's right.
Right?
Yeah, it's a fascinating concept, because when I put all these ideas kind of out in the world, I never had any inclination that this was going to be such a hot topic. Like I didn't know, and maybe it was just the right time. Maybe people just wanted to change, wanted to look at things differently instead of working for, the corporation or moving up the ladder. To actually figure out how to gain freedom. And then we had COVID, where people experienced a little more freedom, not in many cases, not having to go to work, being able to work from home or work online. I just could have never guessed in a 1,000 years that this would have been such a right fit for so many people, right? The book just absolutely took off. My podcast is a top 1% downloaded podcast.
And the podcast is also The Lifestyle Investor.
Correct. Yeah. Uh-huh. And so I just think that it's just...
I have an episode.
Yeah, you do. Yeah, it's awesome. And I just think this conversation, this topic, what we're talking about today, Brad, it's like, this is relevant. Yeah. People care more today to own their time than they ever have. So I just wanted to help people buy their time back, to break the chains that are locking them in to whatever it is. It might be locking, it's the golden handcuffs. I make so much money, but I don't want to lose that because I got this great lifestyle. But some people, it's like, I'm chained to security and safety. And so I can't make these decisions that get me out of that safe lane. For other people, I feel like it's like, this is what I've always done. It's hard to get out of the routine. But the brilliance of like owning your time, buying your time back, that is huge. And even since this is a podcast for a lot of entrepreneurs, and I'm an entrepreneur today, I'm an entrepreneur at heart. And I love that space. But the reality is, if entrepreneurs had the income coming in that covered their lifestyle expenses, and let's even take it another step further, covered the expenses that it costs to run their business, I guarantee they'd make different decisions. Mm-hmm. I did. I made way different decisions. I mean, This whole brand came about because I didn't need to make money. And so the irony is that, this is one of the most profitable things I've ever done, even though every decision I made had nothing to do with money. And I think that when finances are covered, you can make the decision to say, hey, why don't we try this out? Why don't we split test this? Why don't I bring in this expensive executive to run this brand or this division or this, new initiative? I think you make better decisions. I think most people make decisions with finances, number one. So the decision is like, can I afford it? Is this a good, use of money? Versus like, what does the business need? Like what's actually, if money were taken care of, what decisions would I actually make in that situation? And it's hard to do that until it's actually taken care of.
Sure. Well, I think one of the things that, and I want to talk about kind of the structural elements of the lifestyle investor back end in the group and what that looks like. But one of the things that's super valuable about it, as you mentioned, is, and you didn't say this directly, but there's an appeal all the way across the board, right? And what's fascinating to me is that you have what you just talked about applies to really fledgling entrepreneurs, that are just getting things going, or people that are 9-to-5ers and are trying to cover the basics of their expenses. And the majority of your group, or a good chunk, are people that are well past that point, where they're well past, could retire right now, could be done right now, but they're driving anyway, and how to invest at that point. And there's a clear shift where either your income hits a certain place or your net worth is at a certain place, probably both, where, as you said, you have to figure out what to do with the money and how to invest the money. So how did that mentality change for you from the initial, I've got to get the basics covered, and you use mobile home parks to create passive income to cover lifestyle plus. How did your investing philosophy change at that point, where you were then in the place of, I've got a bunch of cash and I need to deploy it, as the investor people say?
Yeah, well, so that's a fantastic question. I love this question because once you get to surplus income, that's when it gets really fun. So a lot of people, they just spend the surplus. I don't really.
It's real stupid.
Well, I would agree, but
each their own.
Some people have a hard time with delayed gratification, and so the money's there and they spend it. I am not a big spender. Like I have the things that I want. I don't need a lot of toys. For me, I like experiences. We were just hanging out in Cannes. And, there was the film festival. We ate this incredible meal that you and your team set up overlooking the ocean. And it was just amazing.
By team, you mean my group of debaucherous friends.
Yes.
That were hanging out in
Yes. Well, I was trying to be very, very kind and polite. Yeah.
There's some killer people in that
right
group.
After that. Yeah. Incredible group.
Yeah.
But it's like that. That's where I want to spend money. I want to splurge on the experiences. I don't necessarily need the stuff, but I would like to be able to continue doing that. So when I have surplus, it's either like, okay, well, I can, put some of it in the market. I don't like that strategy. No. When I think about who the wealthiest people, specifically in the U.S., this goes across the board, wealthiest people in the world. But let's talk U.S. because I've looked at these numbers. And I'm also part of Tiger 21, so I'm very familiar with where they spend money, which is a group where you have to have a minimum of $20 million net worth to get in, to even be considered. And then it's a pretty stringent application process. And so that
I feel like that number escalated. Wasn't it previously 10?
It was 10. Yeah, They bumped it up
awesome.
A few months ago. And so you think about that, and even inside of that group, you've got about a quarter that are in, 25% in real estate, 25% in private equity. So half, and by the way, this is true across the board. If you study family offices, which are the organizations that basically invest money for the wealthiest people in the world. But if you look at the numbers, which I've had access to here in the US, luckily I've got a lot of friends in this space. It is almost like across the board that 50% or more of the wealthiest people's net worth is in private equity and real estate. And then the interesting thing is most people think that it's in the stock market, right? And it's just not. Most people make their money and then utilize 20 to 25% of their allocation in the stock market to maintain their wealth or to build it slowly, but not putting all their eggs in that basket. And so I could do that with my surplus, or since I know that the majority of wealthy people are in private equity and real estate, why don't I just get really good at the rest of real estate and then in evaluating private equity deals? Like, how do I get good there? And so that just came from relationships, putting in the reps, seeing deals that most people don't see because of, years spent on meeting people, for over a decade. I took someone to lunch, coffee, or dinner. So when I was single, it was dinner. And then once I got married and had my daughter, it was lunch or coffee. And without fail, every week, unless I was on vacation, I took someone out that was smarter than me in some area, which not a high bar, but someone that had an expertise that I wanted. Mm-hmm. And I would pick their brain. And that has served me very well over the years, from relationships to knowledge to you name it. I've had a lot of strategic partners that way. And I think the best way to learn how to invest is to mirror the best in class and learn from what they're doing, but then also have your money exposed, your money in the game, because I guarantee you will pay attention a lot more when you have money and skin there.
Isn't that wild? There's no way around that, right? Mm-hmm. If you don't have it on the line, whatever that is in your life, you don't learn the same lessons.
That's right.
One of the things that's been very loud through this conversation at several points is this ongoing desire to recognize what you're not great at and be humble and learn from other people, despite having what I think almost 99.999% of the people on the planet would consider a very successful career and net worth, et cetera. I love that. And I think that I and many people need to learn from that and consistently be reminded of it, because it's easy to have this mentality like you did when you were 24 of, oh my God, I just made $1 million and I've made 10 times more than anybody in my family just now at 24. It's hard for many to simultaneously look at that and be proud of it, and also not think, I'm the shit. I know everything. I'm killing it right now. So I love that approach. How do you think about that relative to fitting it into the rest of your life? I have this struggle of, and given I'm in a place where I'm operating, right? I'm in it day to day. I need more people on the team.
Plug anyone listening who would like an opportunity.
Yes, exactly. I need good leaders. Direct. Yep, easy pay direct. And otherwise in real estate. I want to get back to real estate, but how do you think about the time allocation in your life and how you balance that? Is that do you just see that as the highest and best use of your time is sitting down and having coffee and lunch once a week with somebody?
I do think that is near one of the highest uses of my time. I have a desire to connect and engage. So I want to learn, I want to connect, and I want to have, great, meaningful relationships with people. So it checks off the box of relationship, learning, kind of doing something new or going somewhere new. So I get a little bit of variety with the education, with the relationship. It really checks a lot of the boxes that are most important to me. So that is, and by the way, as you know, I'm very strict with my boundaries of when, what I can do. And so, I made a decision back when we had our daughter that, family dinners were going to be a thing, unless I'm out of town, which I'm not out of town much. And if I am, they're with me, right? I don't travel a whole lot without them. That evenings are kind of ruled out. Maybe one evening a week, but that's really about it. And often it's like after that family dinner. So that shrinks my day. Mm-hmm. And then in the mornings, I'm spending time with the family. So my days got shorter and I had to learn to be more efficient. So like I remember some exercises I would do. It's like, what are the top dollar, like what is the highest income earning, I guess, decisions, activities, objectives in any given day. And it's like, well, this activity, I don't know, maybe that's a $300 an hour activity. This one is $1,000 an hour activity. And it's figuring out like, where is that top 20% that really creates the 80% of the results? What 20% of activities? And then how do I make sure I'm doing just the majority of that? And I do think for me, meeting people that can help me get better in whatever area of life it is. If it's health, if it's business, if it's investing, if it's, whatever it is, or it's just something fun. Maybe there's a common theme, like they enjoy entrepreneurship. So do I, right? So that commonality makes it really fun and easy to engage in. So it's a very effortless conversation. Yeah, that to me serves me well.
Yeah, but that's at the crux of it for me. I love that. I love hanging out, having good conversations. It's why we're sitting here, right? On a Saturday drinking champagne. Cheers, by the way.
Cheers.
Yeah. But rationalizing doing that in the middle of the day in the work week, there's some conflict with me in terms of how you fit that into the frame of, is this a $300 or $1,000 an hour activity or a $5,000 an hour activity? And so the follow-up question to that is, over what time horizon? Is it a $300 activity that will play out in 6 months, in 1 month, in a year, in 10 years, or a $5,000 activity in that same? So like, how do you think about that from a time horizon perspective?
Yeah, that's a great question, Brad. And, in these meetings, I can't say that every meeting I walk away and I'm like, whoa, that was a game changer. But every meeting, there's at least like 1 or 2 or 3 nuggets where I'm like, oh, that was really good. Like that one sentence or that one idea was worth it. Now, it doesn't have to be quantifiable. So sometimes to me, it's like, whoa, that was a total mind shift. I don't know how that applies to the business or how I can translate that, but just getting me to think that way is opening the door to some other cool stuff that is to come. So sometimes it's just, there's no way to calculate it, but other times it's like, whoa, I'm going to go back. I'm going to apply this right away. And sometimes on deals, like I might meet with someone that has a deal and I'm like, okay, I can apply this tomorrow. Right? I'm digging into this. This is a great investment. I just did a deal. You'll appreciate this. I just did a deal for land in Dripping Springs. And so for your audience that doesn't know, it's a, incredible area that's more kind of like farm or country outside of Austin, but it's growing. It's like one of the fastest non-Austin part of the Austin ecosystem areas right now in the whole state. And so there was an investor that bailed last minute with like concerns of what's going on with the economy and the stock market's getting crushed. And so bailed on this deal. And I was able to swoop in and bring my mastermind into this deal. I selfishly, I almost wanted to kind of take a lot of it myself, but I knew that I wanted to give as many people an opportunity as I could inside my group. And so we ended up scooping up a deal where the land, we bought 112 acres. 112, but get this, we bought it for $47,000 an acre, which is unheard of because the appraisal comps had it at $150,000 an acre, and the parcel right next to it just sold for $190,000 an acre. So we got an offer the day we closed for $2 million more to buy it if we just assigned it over, which we didn't do because this thing's going to be killer. But like that's an example of like that meeting. That introduction, that time spent was so well worth it. And I only met that person because I was friends with someone else and spent the time with someone else, another person in my mastermind that linked us up. Mm-hmm. And so it's funny that it was an indirect, opportunity, but that wouldn't have happened if I hadn't put myself out there to meet the original person prior to joining my mastermind.
Yeah, these are... I drill in because I seek alignment in my life and I want all things to just operate together in harmony. And I know, and I live most of my life this way, as you know, I know that investing in relationships and spending the time with people, I don't need that to be ROI positive really in any capacity, because ultimately in life it is. And maybe it's return on investment or it's return on relationships, which ultimately leads to uplifting myself, right? Which leads to a better life, financially and otherwise. So I'm with you on that. I'm also a little irritated that I didn't hear about this deal from you.
This deal was like, we wrapped everything up in less than 48 hours.
If only you had some magical way to get a message into my pocket in real time and let me know about such things.
Next one.
A likely story. So speaking of this real estate deal, and we'll get into the mastermind in a second, but speaking to this real estate deal, one of the things that you said to me a moment ago, and we looked and you talked about, was it PE and real estate? Mm-hmm. Private equity and real estate were the two, that's 50% category that you think about lumping wealth into or creating wealth through. But you mentioned earlier when I talked about mobile home parks, the idea of getting into a fund, a limited partnership, an LP, to invest in a mobile home park that way. And just now, you talked about the granular approach to handling the deal yourself and managing the deal yourself. I tend to, one of the things that I want out of real estate investment is to interact with it, is to manage it, is to understand it, is to have the tangible thing in front of me. And this is the same limitation that I have around being the salesperson versus running a division and running managers that run the salespeople, where I need the control. But I like to be in control of the real estate deal as opposed to buying into a fund where I'm trusting somebody else to run the deal most of the time. How often are you involved in just giving money to a fund and an operator versus you being the one that's running the real estate deal? And how do you think about that with the people in your group?
Well, I think that where I am an expert, I want to be in control, or I want to have a strong level of control. And where I'm not the expert, I want someone else, I want to pay someone, or I'm happy that someone earns a cut to be, the point person to run and operate whatever it is. So I do own most of our mobile home parks outright. I mean, I'm in some mobile home park funds as well, but I've bought every mobile home park myself. I actually, until this year, have never raised money ever for a park, and I only did it on a deal, just for a real quick. I actually had the money, but I wanted to get some people in my group involved. And so I like that. You have better returns, but if there's someone better that can run it and I could get half as great of a return and do nothing, there's something really appealing about that, especially if I'm going to scale my investments in that category. So most real estate now, so I've done single family homes, I've done mobile home parks, I've done storage. All those I've done myself. But today I only do mobile home parks myself, and everything else I am an LP on, or depending on like if I find the deal, or maybe I'm a GP on something if I can kind of connect the dots or whatever it looks like. But 9 out of 10 times I would rather not be putting in the time. I would rather someone better than me that is solely dedicated to this one thing, either this one asset class or this one project right now. That makes me feel really good. And as long as I think they're buying right. So if it's a syndication, if it's a fund, and I'm looking at their purchasing metrics, like what does that look like? What cap rate are they buying at? What is the interest rate that they're getting? What's the spread between the cap rate, the interest rate? Can they make money? Are rents below, where they should be? Are there, strong, I guess, tax advantaged opportunities with this investment where we can make money, but I don't have to, show that money legally. All those things kind of factor in. And if that group's doing a great job, at this point, I'm not trying to maximize return. I just want a good return, and I want to not lose money. And then I'd rather spend my time, like, there's plenty of opportunity to make money. I don't want my time to be capitalized by making money. I want my time to be capitalized by investing into relationships, new ones that could be interesting and strong, and current ones that are most important to me.
That's super interesting, coming from somebody that spends their whole life investing, to say that you're not interested in maximizing your return. Also, you just used no short of 15 different terms that many people probably don't know. If you're heavily involved in real estate, this is one of the things that becomes very challenging when you first step into this space of making a lot of money every year and needing to use the money for something so you don't get taxed, is learning different vehicles. And with learning different vehicles comes jargon and acronyms and new concepts and navigating that. So what I heard really was you functionally assess the entire real estate deal yourself. And you, in the cases that you just mentioned, you have personally done the deals yourself. So you've personally done storage. You've personally done mobile homes. You've personally done, what was the last one you said? Commercial or multifamily?
Single family.
Single family, right? So you've personally done these, so you know how to assess them. And so when you look at a fund or a syndication, and can you define the difference?
Yeah, syndication generally is a single deal or a group of deals, small number. Maybe so basically the metrics of the investment are based on this one-off deal or this portfolio, this one single transaction. Sometimes it can be a delayed closing on several. But a fund is many assets.
Got it. So, okay.
And over a longer period of time. So maybe you're acquiring over the course of a year, 2 years or something.
For 5
years.
Yeah. Okay. So you have the capacity to assess the deal, and you're saying, hey, I've run all the numbers myself because I know that I could do this myself. And if all that looks good, then great, I'll run with it. For people that don't have the expertise in doing it themselves, certainly it would make sense then to not try to do it themselves and to actually lean into a fund or a syndication if they trust that person. How do you, and I guess I'm not going to go down the rabbit hole of how one should try to vet one of those parties, because it's subjective and there's a lot of ways you can do that. But what I am curious about is how you think about the necessary return from you executing yourself versus a syndication or a fund. Do you have math? Do you have a number where you think, hey, if I do it myself, I expect X% return? And let's just take an example in real estate, right? Let's use a specific one, but X% return. And if I'm part of a fund or a syndication, I'm willing to take a fraction of X. Do you have that math? Do you think about it, or?
Yeah, I mean, I certainly do. And I think to answer your earlier question, I mean, the whole reason that there is a demand for the Lifestyle Investor Mastermind is exactly this, right? It's like, well, I don't know how to evaluate a deal. How do I know if an operator is good or not? How do I know that they're not, killing me with fees? Because that's the number one thing I see is a misalignment where a lot of these groups get fees up front and they make money before the investors ever make money. And we would never invest in something like that. We would only invest where the investors get paid first, right, and the GP or general partner running it gets paid the vast majority of what they earn, with low fees along the way, but the vast majority of the return at the end. So they have they're incentivized to finish the deal, to close the deal. So there's lots of things like that. And this is how people learn, getting around others that know this space. But for me, I know if I did a deal, I would want to make at least a 20% cash on cash return on my money. If I did it, I ran it, which is really high. But I can only do that, I think, because of mobile home parks. I think that most people, when I say that, they're like, what? Because, we've gotten anywhere from like 30 to 105% cash on cash return year one.
Wow.
I mean, just crazy.
In mobile home parks?
In mobile home parks, yeah. So that high, you're probably not getting that consistently anywhere else. But, in self-storage and in mobile home parks, they're the two least consolidated asset classes. Mobile home parks is number one, least consolidated. So those opportunities exist. You have baby boomers that want to retire, that you can get a good price because they just want a certain number. And if it's worth that number, you give it to them. Like I bought a park that they said, we want $2.7 million for this park. And I was like, great. And I signed on the dotted line. I'm like, let's get this thing signed as fast as humanly possible because it was worth about $5.5 million.
Got it. So least consolidated is beneficial because institutional capital, giant companies that are rolling up these investments have not swooped in and bought them yet.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, and in both of those industries that I mentioned, self-storage and mobile home parks, you're seeing more and more institutional money coming in. The big players are coming in, putting money in.
And self-storage really has not rolled up yet?
It has more so, but it's still very, it's not even 50% consolidated. Yeah.
Interesting.
It's more, so institutional money owns less than half of all, 63,000 ish self-storage assets.
Oh my God.
And then mobile home parks are 44,000. And mobile home parks are being redeveloped. About 100 a year get redeveloped. So it's decreasing. And it's hard to build them. Like you can't get the zoning. Yeah.
Yeah, right. Redeveloped into different asset class.
Self-storage, you can build them. People like it. Cities like it.
Right. Cities like self-storage.
Yes.
Cities do not like mobile home parks.
Correct.
And so mobile home parks, can you create them at all right now?
You can. It's really hard. You have to have the zoning, and most cities don't want it because, let's say that you've got a home that's worth, I don't know, $5,000, and so they're getting like $50, $100, $200 to cover school and hospital for like the kids. Like it's incredible. So cities are losing money on that. They want to redevelop into something where they can make the money.
Wow. And what a complex economic problem.
That's right. But at the same time, it's a solution. It's affordable housing. You need affordable housing.
And
right?
it's you are getting something from people that would otherwise be renting somewhere.
That's right.
Which I guess they're still getting taxed from whoever the landlord is that they're renting from. But yeah, that's super interesting.
And by the way, I like industrial distribution centers and warehouses very similarly because I think the demand is just growing and growing. So this is different and it's not as scarce as a mobile home park, but it's in vogue, right? This is e-commerce needs this. There's only going to be more of them. We're only going to shift more to e-commerce every single day.
Okay, so tell me a little bit about the mastermind group, how it works, why people are a part of it. Give me the elevator pitch and the bullets on it.
Well, it's really fun. It's funny because it started out as an investors group. And so I do a deal and it was like, hey guys, come check this out. Let me know what you think. I'm going to invest in it. And if you have any interest, you can invest in it as well. And I'll just, I've already negotiated terms. You can come in at my terms. And so I was just doing it because it was fun. It was a hobby, and I took a year off. So I think it was 2017. I took the year off, didn't do anything work related. We traveled the globe. I think we went to 13 different countries as a family and just had a blast. And I remember spending that time journaling and reading and thinking, like, what are the things that I would do if I don't have to work? So like, what do I spend my time doing? And it was learning. It was teaching. I taught a bunch of my friends how to become financially free over the course of that year. Just for fun, like not charging anything. And then I was doing investments. So it was like those three things: learning, teaching, and investing.
And learning was, you read 100 books that year?
Yeah, 172 books, which is crazy.
Read and listened to. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Crazy.
That is crazy.
So that in itself was a great eye opener to like, hey, why don't I just create a group that just does this? Like, I can teach, but I can also bring people on that I can learn from, and I can make it really exclusive because, it's a very high price point. So we're not just letting anyone in. It's a very, it's a long process. We've got like a 60-person wait list right now to get in. It's nuts. And our renewal rate for the group is off the charts, like 85, 86%. And so it's just some of the smartest, sharpest people I've ever had the privilege and luxury of being associated with. And, it's people that I remember looking like, where is the top mastermind or networking group or investors club? And I just never felt like I found it, but I feel blessed that the group that I've been looking for is the one that I've been able to create. And so we've got several people here that are just so utterly successful. It's crazy, that are always sharing. So it's a community that we all get smarter because there's someone that has expertise in some area for every investment we do. And then I just bring these deals. I call them invisible deals, not available to the public. No one knows about them. And we vet them together. I do my own level of vetting ahead of time to make sure I like it. And then I negotiate preferred terms. And then we get in these deals that most people would never see. And then we get preferred treatment. So it's pretty cool. But my group makes me smarter. So we got 130 members, and they make me so much smarter. They're collectively, a lot of people join the Lifestyle Investor Mastermind because they think they want more time with me. And soon they realize, whoa, this community is as smart and sharp of a community as you're ever going to find. And it's way more impressive than anything I individually bring to the table.
Awesome. Where do people find out more about that?
Yeah, if you go to justindonald.com/mastermind, that's where, that kind of sits. I've got a whole bunch of, cool stuff. I got a ton of free stuff, blog and podcast and, the Lifestyle Investor book. But I've got some different courses, an online course, a couple of master classes. But really the top value, I think, is the community. There's education, there's experts. There's a document library. There's a vendor list. There's everything. Anything anyone could ever want is there. So I think it's the best value out there. And it's not even my highest priced item, but it is. It's tough to get in, and there is an application process, and there's several interviews, and we have not picked a bad apple yet. It's awesome.
I don't know. I know some of the people in the group. And you also look at financials to do that, right? So one of the things that I love about my world is that inside of Easy Pay Direct, we see financials very often, right? And we are controlling top line revenue for all these companies. So we get to see what's actually happening. And one of the reasons that I love that group is because as a result of years and years and years and years and years of somebody telling me a story and then me seeing their financials. Somebody telling me a story, then seeing financials. Story financials. My bullshit radar is so sensitive. And sometimes I can't quite put a pin on what's wrong, but something goes off. I can tell something's off. And one of the things that I love about the group is that I can validate the quality of what's happening and the foundation of it. So I love that. So I'm excited for people to check it out. I love seeing what you're doing, and I appreciate spending time, man.
Yeah, this has been awesome. And by the way, I've told you this before. I'll share it again. It's kind of fun, even being on air. Maybe you'll feel more of a need to do this. One of my friends, I strongly encourage, because they had all financials because they were lending in the cannabis space. And so you have to have all kinds of financials. There's probably only, 600 or so regional banks that will actually open an account for these cannabis companies since it's federally legal. And so one of the investments that we've done is kind of like hard money lending to very highly profitable cannabis companies with all kinds of hooks in for collateral. Just there's no way for us to lose money. But we get to see all these financials. We get to know the state of that company. And one of the cool things that we now have seen, and I encouraged my friend in this space to start investing on the equity side in some of these deals, if we could structure it right, because we already know their financial situation. We've got more data points than anyone. And so they may not even be looking for an investment, but we can propose it. And so we just got this killer investment that I think is going to be maybe one of the biggest home runs that I've ever done. And my goal is not home runs. I really just want singles and doubles. And if we get a home run, great. And we, this last year, we actually had 3 companies in our investment portfolio go public, and we've got a few more coming up. So we've hit some, but the goal is never that. The goal is like, let's try not to lose money.
Yes.
And then get a single or a double so that we can just continue to perpetuate the growth on that investment. And so for you, I feel like there's ample opportunity. You're looking at all these financials. You can make, your own, pitches or offers to these companies where you could have a strategic partnership. You could have a piece of equity. You could have a rev share. You could have all these different things where hey, these guys are really cash strong. Or you could be the matchmaker to someone else since you have this information. So it could be a unique opportunity to, kind of get some skin in the game with some of these companies based on your inside knowledge.
I love that. Well, that's also largely contingent on, largely contingent on not being bogged down by operations, is thinking about sort of, I look at that as making the core business optimal or functional and executing and thriving, and then increasing LTV, right? The lifetime value of your client, right? That's sort of the same bucket of once things are operating exactly how, then you can shift gears and say, hey, how do I make more out of each relationship, exchange, et cetera? It fits in that bucket. And I love that thought.
That's cool. And by the way, for anyone in your audience that wants a free copy of the book, they just pay for shipping. They can go to lifestyleinvestorbook.com.
Beautiful.
That way you can learn some of the 10 commandments to cash flow investing that I use personally. And I think can be very advantageous for entrepreneurs who don't have the time to do this themselves.
Yep. Beautiful. Justin, I appreciate the time on me.
This is awesome.
Let's
do more of it.
Definitely.
If you learned one thing on this episode, share it with another entrepreneur. They need to hear it. Also subscribe so that new episodes just show up on your phone. It's a lot easier that way. And if you want the really good stuff, check out our free BAM! Tactics and Strategies course. It's where we curate the best tips, tricks, and tools that our guests know, whether they've shared them on the podcast or not. Just go to beyondamill.com. You'll also find previous episodes and show notes at beyondamill.com.